want to look at now is being able to define the leading coefficient and the degree of a polynomial. Now, these may sound fairly straightforward, which on most of the items they are, but let's start with just the leading coefficient of a polynomial. So when we look at polynomials, we can look at them in two different ways. When they are in standard format, where they are already multiplied out, okay? And so things like this would look something like f of x is equal to an x squared plus 2x minus 5. Or maybe it might look like g of x is equal to a negative x to the third plus 6x squared minus 12x plus 8. Or maybe it looks like h of x is equal to 2x to the third minus 3x squared. Or maybe it looks something like an m of x equals a negative 343 x to the third minus 196 x squared minus 196 x minus 112. All of these are polynomials, and all of these are written in that standard format. They're all multiplied out. Now, looking at these, the leading coefficient is the number that is in front of that largest exponent of an x. Okay? So we would look for the largest exponent of the x's, and then we would pick off the number that's in front of it. So in the f of x, our leading coefficient would be, not a negative 1, but a positive 1. So we would just have a positive 1. Here, h of x, our leading coefficient, would be a positive 2. G of x, our leading coefficient, would be a negative 1. And for m of x, our leading coefficient, would be a negative 343. So whenever it's in standard format, it is literally just picking off those numbers in front of that largest exponent. In other words, put your equation or expression or your polynomial in order from your largest exponent down, and it's that number that leads it off. Well, when things are in what we consider factored format, it's a little bit more difficult. Because when we're looking at things in factored format, what we're looking at are things such as, let's say that we have p of x is equal to, maybe we have 5x plus 3 times an x minus 1 times an x plus 2 times a negative 2x plus 7. And we square that one, okay? So our leading coefficient isn't the one that's just sitting out here now. We have to look at everything. So whenever it's in factored format, we have to look at the values sitting in front of all of our x's. And we also have to be careful of our exponents, because our leading coefficient is actually all of our coefficients of our x's multiplied together. So if we think about this, we have a 5 times this 1 times this 1 times this -2, but that -2 is squared. So in this case, we would have 5 times 1, which is 5, times 1, which is 5, times -2 squared, which is 4. So our leading coefficient here is actually a positive 20. So you have to pay attention here to all of the values that are in front of your x values. Let's look at another one where it's in factored format. Maybe it is c of x is equal to a -6 times x plus 3 to the 4th power times an x minus 2 times an x plus 7 squared times a -x plus 8 times a 3x, let's go with -3x plus 4. Okay? So if we look at this one, and we go with all of our coefficients, we do have to take into account this negative. We've got to take into account this 1, this 1, this 1, this -1, and this -3. So we're going to have a -6 times a 1 to the 4th power times a 1 times a 1 squared times a -1 times a -3. So this 1 is going to just be a 1. This will just be a 1. So I have a -1 and a -3. So those would become a positive 3. All of these are just 1s. And I have a -6. So -6 times 1 times -3. My leading coefficient is actually going to be a -18. So notice, in factored format, it's not just this leading number here. I have to take into account all the signs and numbers of all of my factors also. So when you're looking at this, you have to be very careful for leading coefficients if it's already in standard format or if it's in factored format. Now in the next video, we'll discuss the degrees of all of these particular polynomials that we've already looked at.